Hello everyone and welcome to my presentation. Today I'll be focusing on the Amazon rainforest and how climate change affects that. This presentation aims to outline the dependence of human health on global and local ecological systems, prevent, diagnose, and treat the adverse health effect attributed to climate change, and on this presentation focusing on the Amazon wildfires and its consequences, and third, explain how the health impacts of environmental change are distributed unequally within and between the population, and I'll be focusing on the indigenous population in this presentation. Now let's talk about the Amazon geographical location. The Amazon covers a huge area, 6.7 million square kilometers of South America, mainly in Brazil, but also other countries such as Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, Venezuela, and other countries. This vast, untamed wilderness is under increasing threat from huge-scale farming and ranching, infrastructure, urban development, unsustainable logging, mining, and climate change. Here are just two quick facts to give you an idea of what's at stake here. First of all, the Amazon has more species of primate than anywhere else on Earth. Imagine, and you can find more types of ants on one tree in the Amazon than you can in some whole countries. This obviously says something about the Amazon and that we need to protect the Amazon. Let's talk a bit more about why the Amazon is so important. First of all, South America's Amazon contains nearly a third of all tropical rainforests left on Earth. Despite covering only around 1% of the planet's surface, the Amazon is home to 10% of all the wildlife species. Research shows, on average, a new species of animal or plant is being discovered in the Amazon every 3 days. However, tragically, because huge parts of the forest are being destroyed so fast, we may never know all the riches it holds. People around the world, as well as locally, depend on the Amazon for food. About 80% of all the developed world's food originally came from the rainforest. That being said, it also plays a very critical and important role in regulating the world's oxygen and carbon cycles. It produces roughly 6% of the world's oxygen and has long been thought to act as a carbon sink, meaning it readily absorbs large amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Sadly, this beautiful forest, is burning. The Amazon is under siege like never before. Deforestation and fire are once again on the increase. The forest is burning, and protected areas and indigenous lands face increasing threats. The Amazon is at the heart of the global climate concerns now. Not only does the destruction of rainforests add to carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, it creates a negative feedback loop. This negative feedback loop means an increase in deforestation causes a rise in temperature, which in turn can bring about a drying of tropical forests and increase the risk of forest fires. An unprecedented number of fires raged through Brazil in 2019, intensifying in August. That month, the country's National Institute for Space Research, INPE, reported that there were more than 80,000 fires, the most that it had ever recorded. It was nearly 80% jump comparing to the number of fires the country experienced over the same time period in 2018. More than half of those took place in the Amazon. Huge areas of rainforest are destroyed by clearing for farming, timber, roads, hydropower dams, mining, house building, or other developments. The problem is it's often seen as more economically worthwhile to cut the forest down than to keep standing, and this is a perception that definitely needs to be worked on. Rising global demand for food, especially meat, has led to Brazil becoming the world's biggest beef exporter and the second biggest exporter of soybeans, mainly used for livestock feed. More and more forests are being removed to make way for grazing land or soy. Now that we talked about the Amazon, why it matters, and what's happening, let's talk a bit more about how it affects us and the health consequences due to the fires. A 2020 study estimated that nearly 5,000 premature deaths in Brazil during the 2019 fire season were attributed to fire emissions. This is a 74% increase over 2018, and is estimated to increase more in the next few years. That being said, hospitalization rates have also increased since the 2019 fires. There were estimated to be 2,195 hospitalizations for respiratory illnesses. More than 1,000 of those patients were aged over 60, and almost 500 infants under the age of 1. Research found that in August 2019, nearly 3 million people in 90 Amazon regions were exposed to harmful air pollution levels over the World Health Organization's recommended threshold. The number increased to 4.5 million people in 168 countries in 1 month. Healthcare providers and officials fear that medical facilities already struggling with COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 will face further stress caring for people affected by fires, potentially collapsing the healthcare system in parts of the Amazon region. The smoke may also aggravate the virus symptoms, resulting in more serious cases and deaths. Let's talk a bit more about who's most responsible for these fires and who's most affected by them. Amazon fires are burning this year within the protected lands inhabited by isolated, uncontacted indigenous people. The fire is largely illegal and intentionally set by land grabbers, ranchers, and farmers, are often utilized as a deforestation tool, clearing land for timber, beef, and soy production. The fires can deprive these forest people of their homes, forcing them to leave their ancestral lands. Uncontacted indigenous groups, which may be more accurately described as indigenous people in voluntary isolation, still exist in all 9 of Amazonia's countries and are among the most vulnerable to deforestation and fires, as they rely entirely on the forest to meet their needs for food, medicine, and shelter. Forest destruction can also push them from their territories into close contact with outsiders. This means exposure to disease, for which they have little to no immunity. Fighting these fires is the responsibility of the Brazilian government, which has faltered in that duty under the government of President Jair Bolsonaro. Brazil's environmental agency, IBAMA, which in the past successfully fought Amazon fire, has faced debilitating budget cuts and personnel shakeups under Bolsonaro, as well as logistical difficulties due to the pandemic. IBAMA's firefighting work was suspended for several weeks due to the lack of funding. Bolsonaro, for the second year in a row, sent the army in to fight Amazon fires and enforce environmental protections, a job for which experts say the military is ill-suited. Increasingly, indigenous people have taken matters into their own hands, in many cases forming indigenous firefighting squads. Now that we know more about the Amazon and why it's so important to us, let's think, how can we make a change? Well, here are some suggestions you can do to make a change that begins by being a part of the change. That includes raising awareness, sharing it on social media, talking to your friends and family about it. If we all make it socially, economically, and politically unacceptable, it will eventually come to an end. Remember, the more voices, the louder the call. Second, becoming a discerning consumer. As mentioned, the fires are a direct result of deforestation, and the food we eat should not cost the earth. Therefore, less demand means less deforestation and healthy forests. Along those lines, we can also reduce wood and paper consumption. Large areas are often burned to access trees. Reducing the amount of paper and wood we use is a good way to help reduce commercial pressure on the Amazon as well as other forests. Where it's harder to reduce consumption, look for rainforest safe production. And lastly, donating and supporting indigenous community. Donating to corporations that support the Amazon and indigenous communities can help indigenous communities stay in their land and, of course, the whole ecological system. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you learned something new.